When the Master of Masters was giving out roles to his pupils, one role in particular stands out, and that's the one of Luxu's. He was tasked to venture into the world with a keyblade containing the eye of the Master to observe future events up until a certain point so they could be written down in what is known as the Book of Prophecies. We're made aware that Luxu succeeds with his task since the Book of Prophecy exists prior to him even leaving to start his assignment. Additionally, he was tasked to train a worthy apprentice to pass down the Keyblade and to keep safe a mysterious black box. Luxu is also instructed to not get his hands dirty and to only observe, but from what we've seen of Luxu throughout the series, it doesn't really seem that he's done such a good job. Post Union Cross, we find out that he's attending school at Scala ad Caelum under the alias of Bragi. He's very much involved with the events that happen within the story and doesn't really hold himself back to any way, shape, or form as the Master instructed. We also discover that the Keyblade that Luxu was told to pass down is mantled on the wall within the school, and its wielder is the teacher at the school, Master Odin. Eventually, the Keyblade is passed down to one of Master Odin's students by the name of Xehanort. After Luxu's endeavor as Bragi comes to an end, as he is believed to be dead following the events of a rogue student succumbed by darkness who strikes him down, 70-some years later, we discover that he's adopted a new alias under the name of Breg and works as an apprentice for Ansem the Wise to study the secrets of the heart. During his apprenticeship, he is approached by an older Xehanort and is asked to assist him with his goals, all for the promise of having his Keyblade bequeathed to him. Xehanort's goals end in failure as he's defeated, thus leaving Xehanort's Keyblade wielderless until discovered by Brag himself, who now goes under the alias of Xigbar. As Xigbar claims his Keyblade once again, he is approached by the Master's other pupils, the foretellers who've traveled to the same point in time. In that moment, Xigbar is questioned if he is actually Luxu, in which he responds that he is and hasn't heard that name in a long time. He's been surviving after all these years, overtaking vessel after vessel in order to achieve the Master's role that was bestowed upon him. Although he didn't. He was told to only observe, to not get his hands dirty. He was instructed that he could go off and do his own thing after his role was completed, but his role to observe future events had only been completed at that point in time when he acquired his Keyblade back. So he failed to follow the role that was given to him. Or did he? Let's rewind all the way back to shortly after Luxu left to start his journey. We're made aware that Luxu has expressed concern for the Dandelion Union leaders, a group of talented Keyblade wielders that were handpicked by another foreteller and tasked to survive and rebuild the world after its inevitable demise. Luxu, feeling that the Dandelions were in danger from the looming darkness, was told by the Master himself that he could watch over them, but nothing more, to calm his concerns. Amongst the leaders is a dark-haired boy wearing a hat by the name of Brain. Luxu approaches Brain and has a conversation with him, expressing remorse that this lifetime was the only one that he was ever going to have, as the world around them had begun to fall into its destruction. Sometime after this conversation, we discover that Brain himself now has both Luxu's Keyblade and the black box that the Master has tasked him to keep an eye over. Was Brain the first vessel that Luxu took over? It seems highly likely, but there's something else that needs to be considered. One of the members of the Dandelions, Ephemer, had escaped the destruction of the world via a time-traveling device to the future, where he encounters the ruins of his hometown, known previously as Daybreak Town. Upon the destroyed remains of Daybreak Town, Ephemer decides to construct a school to train future Keyblade wielders. After some time has passed, Brain mysteriously finds himself at this school, and there we find out that the world itself goes by a new name of Scala ad Caelum. We know that Luxu attended school at Scala ad Caelum as Bragi, and the rest is history, right? Well, what if it wasn't Luxu that attended, but Brain instead? While not explicitly stated, we assume that Luxu travels from point A to point B to point C, from jumping from Brain to Bragi to Brag, and ending as Xigbar. But what if it wasn't Luxu overtaking new vessels, but Brain himself. We have no indication that Luxu overtook Brain as his new vessel, so there's room to assume that Brain could be the pupil whom Luxu chose to pass his Keyblade. But Brain also has possession of the black box, which isn't something the master told Luxu to pass down, just the Keyblade. So did Luxu give the black box to Brain and tell him to go on his merry way? My theory points to yes. Luxu must have realized that interfering with the events of the future was going to be next to impossible, so he recruited Brain to help him with his role. Brain would do all the dirty work as Luxu observed from the sidelines. Without a Keyblade himself, he entrusted the black box to Brain to keep it safe and would continue to monitor it as he was told to do so. When Brain arrived at Scala ad Caelum, he was greeted by Sigurd, who is aware of who Brain is, as Ephemer spoke highly of him, as the two of them were really good friends. Having notable recognition from the founder of Scala ad Caelum, allowed Brain to intermingle with the world's inhabitants and become one of them, allowing him to take on a pupil, start a family, and have a child. Bloodline that can live on and represent himself for future generations. After some time has passed, Brain passed down the Keyblade given to him from Luxu to his worthy apprentice, Odin. A few years passed, and a child of destiny is born by the name of Balder. This event spurs Brain into motion. Maybe Balder could be the key to help Luxu achieve his goal. Some years pass, and Balder's old enough to begin his training as a Keyblade wielder. Brain, an old man, sheds his former body and melds with a random young vessel and becomes Bragi. Unbeknownst to his own grandchild, Ericus, he enrolls in class to monitor Balder as a potential vessel. I know what you're probably thinking. Xigbar confirmed to Envy that he was in fact Luxu. So how can Xigbar not be Luxu? Well, it's because Xigbar is lying. He's pretending to be Luxu under the instruction of Luxu himself. But why would Luxu do that? He's supposed to be helping the master. He's gone this far to do his role. Why would he pull off some kind of sneaky trick on his fellow foretellers? Well, the answer to that can be derived from a conversation that Luxu and the master had shortly before Luxu began his journey. The master confides with Luxu that his ultimate plan is to defeat the all-powerful 13 true darknesses. He trained 6 pupils to each harbor one of the true darkness within each of their hearts, and another within the heart of the master, while the remaining darknesses were to be locked within a digital world with no method of escaping. Luxu, hearing of the master's plan, is distraught. The master says that he's not planning on sacrificing any of his pupils, but he's not been transparent with any of them about his true intentions. It's led to believe that Luxu does not agree with this course of action and has reason to doubt the master's intentions, as he walks away silently after the master tells of his plans. Luxu, knowing full well that he can't escape the fate that the master has forced upon himself and the other foretellers, he devises a plan to carry out his role, but has ulterior motives to potentially stop the master's goal. Thus, he enlists Brain as an accomplice to be the pupil to whom he bestowed the Keyblade, and is by proxy able to avoid the vision of the all-seeing eye embedded within the Keyblade to carry on his plans while keeping a close eye all the while. So if Brain has had to jump from vessel to vessel after all this time, would it stand to reason that Luxu would have to do the same as well? But unfortunately, there isn't much to go off on with who could be a potential vessel for Luxu, as every character seems to have an established backstory. Well, that is except for one character. And who might that character be? Well, let's just say that he's someone who isn't too keen on getting involved in matters and aligns with Luxu's whole role of just observing. That character is none other than Demyx himself. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Demyx clearly is involved within the organization. He fights Heartless along with even fighting Sora, Donald, and Goofy. By that logic, Demyx can't be Luxu. And to that, I ask you, where's the Keyblade? Where is the eye that's supposed to be watching over all the events that are supposed to be happening? The answer is that it's nowhere to be found. While Terra Xehanort succumbs to the darkness, creating his Heartless Ansem and Nobody Xemnas, there isn't anyone who has possession of the Keyblade with the Master's Eye, making that entire point in time undocumented. So, what do Luxu and Brain do? Well, Brain, going around as Brag at the time, has unwillingly been separated from his heart due to Terra Xehanort releasing it and thus allowing him to become a nobody, which we know as Xigbar. At this point, Xemnas needs to be monitored. If he's to be defeated, then Xehanort will be recompleted, allowing the Keyblade with the Master's Eye to continue surveying the surrounding events. So, how would Luxu be able to communicate with Xigbar if he's now a part of Xemnas' organization of nobodies? Well, simple. He becomes a nobody himself, joining the organization as the first non-Ansem the Wise apprentice, Demyx. From there, both Xigbar and Demyx monitor the ongoings of the organization and develop a plan. Make Demyx an undependable asset. I know that sounds odd, but hear me out. Demyx puts on this whole show of being lazy and not wanting to be involved in missions, which is something that would be easy for Luxu to pull off since he hasn't done much of anything at this point. Meanwhile, Xigbar works on gaining the trust of Xemnas as one of his most valuable assets and sticks by his side to be within the organization, back when he becomes recompleted, in the sleeping worlds, and finally in the real organization. Demyx at this point is just there to fill a slot. He was an unassuming, bumbling idiot that Xehanort just planned to use as a vessel, and he goes completely under the radar. Demyx does what he's told to do, which he tries not to do, but realizes that he must remain within the organization, and without the Master's Eye to watch him, he goes about fighting when he sees fit, all in order to keep his appearance of the lazy doofus. Fast forward a bit, and both Xigbar and Demyx are defeated, and Xehanort is back with the Keyblade. Xigbar is attached to the hip of Xehanort and does all his bidding. Meanwhile, Demyx re-enters the organization as well, but surprisingly is benched and doesn't do much. Maybe in part Xigbar having connections with Xehanort and being able to allow other options to trump Demyx as a pick for the roster. This works out in their favor, since the Master's Eye is back, making it hard for Demyx to do much of anything. But wait, the Eye is back, and Demyx is still involved with events? How does this work if Luxu is instructed to only observe? To that, I answer, does the Eye know who Demyx is? That entire period is undocumented. Demyx, for all the Eye knows, is just another person. It didn't see Luxu turn into a nobody, so there's nothing to suspect, and Demyx can continue to do whatever he wants to do. So what does Demyx do? He seems to be helping the good guys, but what does he gain from doing that? I'd say he's trying to build an opposition to go against the Master when he pops back up to move forward with his plan. Luxu's plan, from my perspective, is that he wants Sora and crew to defeat the Master of Masters to save his fellow foretellers. But the Master's plan is to defeat the darkness. Why does Luxu oppose it? Why can't he just trust the Master has good intentions? It kind of seems like he's on the side of darkness with the way he's going about things. To that, I'd say he's very correct, since he is harboring one of the true darknesses within himself. Luxu, to protect his friends, is falling prey to his emotions and being manipulated from the inside with the darkness nuzzled within himself. Knowing that Luxu will go to any length to do what's right will cause him to inevitably become everyone's enemy. The Master will oppose him for going against his lifelong goal, and the Guardians of Light will view Luxu as an ally of darkness that they need to defeat. A puppet controlled to a fate of his own destruction, a destruction that's ultimately done at the hands of the true Puppet Master himself, the Master of Masters. The Master warns Luxu multiple times to not let his emotions get the better of him, but sadly, Luxu does not listen. The Master unfortunately is aware of his pupil's trait and is only able to watch as Luxu unwillingly carves a future out for the Guardians of Light, setting events in motion to have the Master's goal come to fruition. Luxu is defeated, and the foretellers are doomed to potentially fall within the same fate as himself, leaving Brain in disarray to revolt against the Master in honor of his fallen teacher.